Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about MPC Live's warp feature and maybe a little bit about Timestretch and how those things compare to each other, maybe how they can be used in conjunction with one another. Rather than call this a tutorial, let's call it an overview. And my idea is to get a few different samples from, say, like 3 or 4 different records and get them synced up in the same tempo using the warp feature, and then see if I can also get all these samples in the same key and come up with a beat. Alright, so I'm going to start out with this drum break and just make sure it's lined up. I got, so it's like a 2-bar. It's a 2-bar break. I want to make sure that it's looped properly so I can get a right tempo on it. Almost there. I kind of want to fix the end of that. Let's see if that makes a difference. So that's sounding a little better on the loop. I'm going to go ahead and process and discard the rest of that. Okay, so now I want to make sure to press this detect button so I can get an accurate updated tempo. Now that I chopped off the end of it, it should slightly change. I'm going to hit that, hit detect again. And there it is. My new tempo is at 85.91. I'm going to go into menu and program edit. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to put my drum break here on pad 1. So as soon as I input it, you may or may not have noticed over here the tempo went from 120 to 85.91 because MPC Live has a great BPM detector. Now that we got our beat, our break on pad 1, we're going to go ahead and press the warp function. So what the warp function should do, it's kind of like an automatic time stretch, which will adjust to my sequence. So by default, the main sequence is at 120 beats per minute. So if I hit my pad, you can hear that my drum break is now sped up to 120 beats per minute. So if I adjust my BPM here, and I'm going to press my pad, you may have noticed the further you stretch it away from the original tempo of your sample, the worse it kind of sounds. Speeding up your tempo actually sounds a lot better than if you slow it down. So I think I could say use warp in moderation. Don't stray too far away from your original tempo either way. So what I want to do next is maybe time stretch this breakout just to compare the quality of it to the warp. So I went as far down as 66 beats per minute from 85.91 as my original tempo on this break, which sounded like this. I'm going to move this tempo up to like a reasonable kind of area of something that a tempo that I deal with a lot. So 75 beats per minute. Let's see what that sounds like on warp. So I'm going to roll with that. I'm going to go into my time stretch. And I'm going to see what this sounds like. First of all, I want to make a copy of this. Okay, so I got 2 copies of the break. Okay, so on this one, instead of using the warp, I'm going to compare the sound of the warp feature to the time stretch in the MPC. So I'm going to scroll over here to time stretch. Got my original tempo, 85.91. Going to go in here to the new tempo, change that up, and we're going to go down to 75 beats per minute. Do it. Press the detect again. Okay, so my new tempo there is at 75. Now let's take a listen and see what that sounds like. paired right next to the other. Okay, so here is my warp on pad 1 and my time stretch on pad 2. Let's go. It's kind of hard to tell. If I were to say one sounds better than the other, I would say that the time stretch on pad 2 sounds a little bit better than the warp, but it's barely noticeable. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments. And so kind of listening back a few times to the difference between pad 1 and pad 2, my break with my warp here and one with my time stretch on pad 2, I feel like the time stretch actually sounds better. So I was talking about maybe using warp in conjunction with time stretch. I think this is a scenario where I'm going to go with the time stretch to get to my tempo that I want, and then I'm going to use the warp for matching my beat with, say, another sample, and then getting the different samples from different records into the same key. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to scrap this one and put, let's go ahead, I'm going to scrap this, pad 1, and put time stretch 1 on pad 1. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to do that I haven't even explored is to see if the warp function will work on chops. So I'm going to go ahead into menu, sample edit, and then press here at the bottom of the screen where it says trim, and change that to chops and get my chops in. So I did 4 chops, and I'm going to program those in and see how that works with the warp feature. Alright, so what I have here in the program edit screen is I got my break chopped into 4 different pieces and on these bottom 4 pads, and I got them set to the same U group so that they cut each other off, and then I sequenced them into track 1. And now I'm going to play them out and just mess with the BPM and watch the warp work its magic. Let's check it out. So I only want half of this break, so what I want to do is adjust some of these chops. So now it's time to look for another sample for my beat. Alright, so I went through another record and I found this piano loop. And right now this piano loop's at 81.38 beats per minute. I'm going to go ahead and process it and time stretch it to 75 beats per minute where the drum break is at. So I'm going to assign it to pad 5. I'm going to do the same thing where I chop it up and have this piano loop in 4 chops here. Now I got 4 chops right here in these sets of pads, and I have these all set to the same U group. I'm going to go ahead now and turn on the warp for all of these pads. So now that I have my warp on, I have more flexibility, and I can adjust my pitch of my sample and keep the same tempo. So let's check that out. So So far I've got a drum break chopped up, and I set them on pads 1 through 4, and I have my piano loop chopped up and set on pads 5 through 8. They're warped so I can adjust the pitch and remain in the tempo that I desire. The challenge comes next. I've got a record, so I want to find a string loop, time stretch it, get it close to where the rest of my samples are, warp it, chop it up, and pitch it, and get it into the same key as my piano. So that is a challenge, and I'm excited, so let's get into that. Here we go. I got my string sample looped up. I went ahead, time stretched it to 75 beats per minute, and I got it on my pads here, and I got them chopped up and in the same mute group. Went ahead and started messing with some of the pitch of some of the chops. I gotta make sure to turn the warp on all these pads. Got some chops here to mess around with. So in order to get my piano loop and my string loop kind of synced up in key, if you take a look at my chops right here, you see that I pitched them differently from each other, just so that they would line up with the piano, and I did the same here with the piano loop. So I think it sounds pretty decent. It's not going to win any Grammys, but the concept is there. Being able to use multiple sources, different records, and combine them together to make one composition. I like the possibilities here, so it's cool.